We should be good to go. We'll get there. There.
Are we on? Boom. Okay,
Boom.
we got it.
How you doing there?
How you doing? Happy birthday to you, man. Happy birthday. You got millions of people wishing you a happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Yesterday was my birthday. Ironically, it's Buddha's birthday also. Not that I'm Buddhist, but it's Buddha's birthday. But it's one of the happiest days of my life. You know, for so many 20-something years, I've been saying this crisis was coming, and it's here. It's probably a perverse or sick way of being happy, but it takes a lot of courage to just keep saying what I think is going to happen or is what happened. So now it's happened, and so I celebrated yesterday, and it's time to get back to work. And what a better way to get back to work than my friend Patrick McDavid.
Good to be on with you, man. I've really enjoyed the time we've been spending lately.
Thank you. Thank you. So, it's your show, man. And thank you, everybody, for joining in.
So, Robert, what do you? So, obviously, I remember your prediction years ago that you made with what's going to happen with the market, and now it's becoming a reality. How are you processing all of this stuff yourself?
Well, it's like anything else, you know. That theory is one thing, and reality is another, and it's frightening. You know what I mean? I'm more compassionate. I don't know how families are taking it. I'm okay because I was ready for it. You know, I mean, my wife and I, Kim, were just sitting there having an expensive bottle of wine, toasting each other because we made it. We came through heaven and hell to make it. And it was worth the journey, but to not know if what I was forecasting was going to come true was self-doubt, you know, and we all have self-doubt. So that's what we celebrated. So we celebrate. And like I said, it's time to move on. The prediction you're talking about here is Rich Dad's Prophecy. And I started writing this book in 1999, and it was about the crash that would come in 2016. Well, it came 4 years later, 2020. But I didn't foresee, in 1999, I didn't foresee quantitative easing and money printing. I just didn't see how dastardly how the people that control the world are. And then to have it come through via a virus, or what Nauseam Talib calls a Black Swan, even more dastardly, and then to shut down the whole world's economy and put millions of people out of work and destroy, you know, small business owners, the lifeblood of the world, to save the rich, the really, really rich, is, I think, criminal. So I celebrated yesterday. Happy birthday to me. Nice bottle of wine. And it's time to move on with my friend, Patrick McDavid.
I'm sure people want to know, what was the bottle of wine? Just out of curiosity. What were you and Kim drinking?
It's one of my best friends. His name is Jean-Charles Boisset, JCB. And is excellent wine. He owns a lot of wines because he comes from the private equity side too, but he's also,
makes sense.
But he's a French guy who owned vineyards. His family owned vineyards in France. So he's for real. Then he went to business school, learned private equity, and now he owns most of the vineyards in Napa Valley also. And then he met his sweetheart. Her name is Gina Gallo of Gallo White. So they are dynasty. If you know what we're talking about here. So there are two, one French dynasty in wines and one American dynasty. And they're the most magnificent people, just magnificent people. So anyway, life is full of really good, hardworking people. And, you know, Gina is, you could call her a rich girl. Yeah, she busts her butt. You know, Kim and I really became friends with her because they're entrepreneurs. Both are entrepreneurs, rich entrepreneurs, but they don't stop working. You know, they love what they do. They're passionate and all that, and they're kind people. And that's, as you know, Patrick, very rare today. Very rare. So the Gallos and the Boisset, JCB, great people.
That's a great combination right there. Well, good for you for enjoying the wine. So, Robert, any good news for us? With all this craziness, $2.2 trillion stimulus, they're talking about it's going to go to $10 trillion. Some are even saying unemployment is going to go to 30% by, you know, late Q2. Any good news or any good predictions you have for the rest of us?
I don't know if it's good news, except to be careful. You know, what changed my life was a book, like it did for many people. And it was this book here. It was called The Grunge of Giants. And it's by Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller. And grunge stands for gross universal cash heist. So when I was, I think in my 30s, I went to study with Fuller. You know, he's most well known for the geodesic dome. And I first saw his geodesic dome in Montreal, Canada, Expo 67, the World's Fair of the Future. So my classmate from school in New York, we hitchhiked up to Montreal just to see Bucky's Dome. It was a U.S. pavilion, and it blew me away. You know, and but we all have these events and teachers in our lives. And so I think the good news is that there's a teacher like you online now. The best teachers are on YouTube, not in schools anymore. And I think that's really the good news, is what we're doing is the news. What's happening in the news today is fake. It's the old news. This, it's tragic. This coronavirus, you know, like, I don't know if it's real. I mean, the virus is real, but the media terrorism is frightening. So I've already been warned many times to stay in my lane. Don't go into medicine. Don't go into this virus. Stay teaching people with my little cash flow game. You know, I'm talking about stay small or we'll stomp on you. So I just remember back in I first went to the Dome in Montreal at the World's Fair in 67. And I studied with Fuller in 1981, and I studied in 81, 82, and 83, and he was predicting the future. He told us what was coming. And as I've said many times to many people, it's not what I want to do. I don't do what I love. I ask myself, what does God want done? And what God wants done is real education, in my opinion, and it's financial education. And there is no real financial education in our school systems, and that's not a mistake. So that was in 81 and 83. I couldn't take it anymore. I read Grunge of Giants, and I understood it because my rich dad kept saying, somebody's messing with us. And every time you say that, you know, you're a tin hat guy, you're an aluminum hat, you're a conspirator, you're a spaceship, you're an alien guy, and I'm just saying, no, I'm an entrepreneur. At the time, I was in rock and roll. You know, my first date with Kim was to the place, you know, and she was out front having a good time, and I was in back with the attorneys negotiating a contract. So I'm not really a rock and roller, but I'm an entrepreneur. And at that time, I said, what does God want done? Not what I want to do. I love rock and roll. And what God wants done is financial education. That was my opinion. And so that was in 83. So yesterday, you know, and so I said, I don't know if that's what I'm supposed to do, because you'll never know. You'll never know what God wants done. So I operate on faith. And yesterday I was drinking my JCB wine, celebrating with Kim. We made it. We're financially free, but more than everything else, we're prepared with a business that teaches financial education to the masses. You see, education is rigged, as you know. It's only if you have money. You know that, I know that. You know, your public school system in America is based upon real estate taxes. So if you live in a rich neighborhood, your schools get more money because the real estate pays for it. But you live in a poor neighborhood, you get the poorest education because the real estate taxes aren't high. So everything's about money, but for some reason, we don't teach money at school. So that's why I kind of woke up, and in 83, I said, I can't be in rock and roll as much as I like. That's working for the Police, Van Halen, Boy George, Duran Duran, and those guys. It was sex, drugs, rock and roll. It was the best of life. And I said, I think I'd better do, what God wants done. Not that I wanted to do it, but I was kind of qualified to teach. So that's why you're my brother. We're both teachers. And, you know, and we're teaching, and what's new is via Instagram, which I have no idea what it is because I'm such an old guy. But I think this is what God wants done. And I say to young people, the millennials, you know, you've been screwed. You know, you're being left with a world that's absolutely in horrible shape financially and all this. Student loan debt, pensions are collapsing, financial systems are collapsing, the rich are getting richer. But apparently somebody gave you something to get yourself out of this. And what the millennials have that I didn't have was an iPhone. The iPhone is the single most powerful. I cannot believe how much power that thing has. So it seems to me, I'm not really religious, I'm not political, but I'm saying that God does provide at some level, and God provided the millennials with an iPhone. Holy mackerel. All you have to do is sync your brain to that iPhone. You have more power than you and I ever had when we were their age. Do you know what I mean? The trouble is, if they haven't gone to school and they have a teacher that is incompetent, and we've all had incompetent teachers, their brain and the iPhone are not synced in to making money. Do you know what I mean? And if you can't make money with your iPhone, there's something wrong in your brain, not the iPhone's brain. And that's what I tell young people. So you and I are the news, Patrick. What we're doing right now is the news. And COVID bacteria and the crash of the economy is the old news. It's the death. So you and I are new right now. And that's the first words Fuller said to my class in 1981. There was 100 of us, and I was about 35 at the time. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, we are the news. What's in the newspaper is old. And what was in the newspaper at the time was Reagan and Star Wars and Russia and nuclear power and all that stuff. He says, that's the death of an old. And so in 81, he says, in 1989, or what he said was, Fuller was a futurist, one of the greatest futurists we ever had. And he said, before the end of this decade, which was 1980, a new technology will emerge and the future will be shown to us. So in 1989, Berlin Wall came down, so exactly as he said. He was already passed on. He was gone in 83. So 89, the Berlin Wall comes down, which was the war between, Russia and Reagan and Star Wars and all that other stuff, nuclear power. And in 89, the World Wide Web came up. So exactly as he predicted. So all you young millennials out there and young people, you have the most powerful tool ever created in humanity. The question is, how are you going to use it? You can use that iPhone the way we're doing it right now to educate, to inspire, to teach. Or you can watch porno on it. What's up to you? It's really up to you.
Porn typically wins 80% of the time, just so you know this, Robert. Porn is going to be when the mind of a 18-year-old sitting there saying Pornhub, versus let me go educate myself over here. Pornhub wins 80% of the time. But you got 20% that don't. So, a couple things you were saying was so interesting. Yesterday I had Danielle DiMartino Booth here. Okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
She's fantastic. She's a great economist. She was with the Federal Reserve 9 years, Dallas Federal Reserve. And she wrote the book called Fed Up. And she said something very interesting. I'm curious to know what your take is on this. I talked to her about the whole $2.2 trillion stimulus package, how it's going to $10 trillion right now. I said, who's going to be affected the most? You got all these different generations. Who's going to be affected the most? Go check on the other one as well. And she said the most interesting thing to me. She says, look, the rich and the wealthy, they're going to get wealthier. They're not going to be affected by it at all.
Right.
She said the poor are not going to be affected by it. I said, why not the poor? It's just because out of the all the unemployment checks that they're sending with the 10 million people that applied for unemployment last month, 25% of the people that are getting unemployment checks, they're getting bigger checks than they were when they had a full-time job.
Amen.
Which is
Amen.
Insane to think about that, right?
Amen.
So I would rather be unemployed getting a check than being fully employed. That's 25%. She said the ones that are going to take the biggest hit is those who make $58,000 a year to $150,000 a year, even to $250,000 a year. Because even at $250,000, people think $250,000 is rich. $250,000 is not rich after taxes. You're only keeping about $140,000 of it, right? Those people who are working, I had one of my employees came up to me to my office. We have over 100 employees here. We have 14,000 agents nationwide and 130 offices. One of my employees came up to me and he got emotional. And I said, why are you emotional? He says, and he's somebody that makes $60,000 a year income. Let's just put a number like that. He's somebody that's not a director, not an executive, not just somebody that does his job, but he's very efficient at what he does. His wife makes $325 a year. Okay. She's a very solid executive for another company. He comes in, he says, Pat, my wife was just fired. I said, really? He says, yes. I said, your wife makes good income. He says, yeah, she made $320 last year. I said, how's she going to replace that? She said, she's not going to replace that. Unemployment's not going to cover any of that stuff. I said, how about severance? Well, with this job, she only been there for 2 years and they don't offer severance for 2 years.
Right.
So I said, what's the plan? Now, most people would think that family is going to be okay, but 320, cost of living, 3 kids, private school, all that stuff, they're going to take a hit. So what do you think about this whole thing that the rich are going to be fine, the poor are going to be fine, but those in the middle income category taking the biggest hit?
Well, let me say again, it's because of the book Grunch, Gross Universal Cash Ice. I could see the future. Fuller was a futurist. And this other book here, Prophecy, I called it for 2016. These were all warnings. It was coming. And I'm not the only guy doing this. You know, there's Jim Rickards who's done it. Danielle DiMartino Booth has done it. So many people have done it, except the people don't listen. That's the problem. And what we are, you know, Chicken Littles. Oh, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. But why can't people hear that? So Rickards and I, Jim Rickards, you know, he wrote Road to Ruin and Aftermath and things like this. We've been saying it's been coming for years. But the average person cannot hear it, and I think that's the problem. And so what a prophet becomes is a Cassandra. A Cassandra is a person who can see the future, but nobody will listen to him. It's kind of funny, isn't it? And the question you and I are always asking is, how come people can't hear it? It's like just now, I got hammered because I said, this COVID virus thing is overblown. I get attacked. And it says, you don't love your family the way I love my family. I said, well, I don't doubt you love your family, but it's your fear that's the problem. You know, if you can't control fear, and that's why I really love your last thing about, you know, a war leader and a peacetime leader. That is one of the most powerful things, you know, distinctions I've made, because you and I both served and all this stuff. And once you go to war, you're different than the guy who didn't even join the service. So when I came back from Vietnam, I went there twice. And once I crossed into combat, you know, it was one thing to be a Marine, but when you cross the line into Vietnam and you have to kill people, your life changes. And when I came back from Vietnam in 73, January 3rd, 1973, I arrived at Norton Air Force Base. I was a different human being. And then I go out into the streets, and all these hippies are screaming at me, spitting on me, throwing eggs on me. Our instructions were, ladies and gentlemen, there's no women at the time in the military, in a combat unit. I was a pilot. They said, change your clothes right away and try and blend in, because your own Americans will try and kill you. And what I think happened is a lot of those hippies became school teachers. And now they carry that education into our school system.
Wow.
So that's why Jordan Peterson
But
talks about.
Powerful.
Yeah, he says, that's why Jordan Peterson says the most important thing to a school teacher is a word called tenure, job security, paychecks, pensions. And that's what they teach their kids subliminally. You know, so you're fragile. And Nauseam Talib, the great guy, Black Swan and Anti-Fragile, he says, we're teaching kids to be fragile, that they need to be protected. You know, fragile means you're like a glass, champagne flute that shatters and never gets put back together. So millions of young people are coming out fragile, like a champagne glass. And a lot of the military guys are like the second category, which is the robust. You know, we're like rocks. You can pound on us, pound on us, pound on us. We won't break, but we don't grow. We remain rocks. And I have friends who are still rocks. You know, they're going to take it, they're going to gut it out, they're going to get through this crisis. But what Talib was talking about, there's another category called anti-fragile. And he said that was the best way to describe it. It was against the fragile person, because we have so many fragile people today. And that's what you're talking about in war leader and peacetime leader. Our peacetime leaders are putting out fragile champagne glasses. Marines call them pussies, the science, you're a pussy. And so an anti-fragile person will come out of this smarter, stronger, better, more able to take on the world. So the reason what Fuller said to me back in '81 to our class is, we are the news. So today, as the world is collapsing behind of us with the stock market and employment, businesses are collapsing, it's fake. It's not real. They're doing it to do it. Some of us will come out anti-fragile. We'll come out stronger, better, more able. And that's why I said, when I saw that iPhone come out, I said, all you millennials or all you entrepreneurs out there, that cell phone is your lifeline out of this mess. Use it. So what we're doing today is anti-fragile. You know, we're wartime leaders, and we're going to come out of this better. I don't know how, but it's called metamorphosis. You know, metamorphosis is like when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. That's metamorphosis. And the definition of metamorphosis, you can look it up in the dictionary, is the transformation from an immature form to an adult form. Immature form to adult form. In other words, grow up. So for some of us, this crisis will grow up. We'll come out of it anti-fragile. We'll come out stronger. And that's why I've been watching my tweets. I say, you know, the best teachers are on YouTube, not in school. Because most school teachers, and this is what Jordan Peterson is saying, he said, Jordan Peterson's being attacked by his own school teachers because they are pussies. You know, they're all these guys, and they tend there, they need job security, they need protection. The world's a terrible place. Capitalists are crooks and all this stuff. And it's a free country. You can listen to those guys if you want, or you can listen to Patrick McDavid. So your thing on the military leader versus the peacetime leader was prescient. It was one of the most important lessons everybody should look at. They have to ask yourself today, am I going to be a military leader and come out of this anti-fragile and stronger, better, healthier? Or am I going to be crushed by what Fuller called grunge, the gross universal cash heist? What Jim Marcus talks about, the academic elite crushing us. You know, you go to school today, you come out weaker. So there's so many books out is how our schools are failing our students. So really, that's really the choices as we listen to this Instagram right now, which I have no idea what it is because I'm so old. You know, I just turned 73. You know you're old. You can't remember how many years it's been. So anyway, it's really the most exciting time. It's also dangerous. It's very dangerous, so be very careful, because the moment I started tweeting about the coronavirus, whatever it is, I was told, stay in my lane. Stay in my lane. We'll get you. And that's exactly what Fuller said back in '81. He says, if I told the world what I know is really going on, they would kill me. And so in '81, I'm about 35 years old. And he says, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be up to your generation, the baby boom generation, to straighten this out. And he says, be careful, because they will kill you. And as you know, some of the people, that doctor who blew the whistle on in Wuhan on the virus, he disappeared. People do disappear. I have a friend who's a hitman for the CIA. He says people disappear. If you step on grunge, gross universal cash ice, they will come and get you. So what you and I are doing right now is very dangerous for our personal lives, our professions, and all this. So all you listening out there, you know, be a wartime leader, but don't be stupid. Watch what you say.
You know, it's crazy. I got a professor from Boston, a very well-known professor, sends me a message this morning. And one of the guys immediately afterwards sends me a message, and he says, there is this dialogue going on with teachers being very scared right now. I said, why is that? He said, professors at universities are frightened the last 3 weeks. Why? Why are they frightened? Well, because they're worried the fact that if we, through this pandemic, it's kind of backfiring on them. This whole shutdown thing is backfiring on the educational system, because everybody's questioning, well, maybe I don't need to go pay $50,000 a year to go to college. Why does a Harvard have $60 billion in endowment? I don't know what their numbers, if you can pull up universities with the biggest endowment, I want to give the right number. Why do I need to go to college? Why do parents need to take money out of their 401ks and send money? Why do parents need to refinance their homes and send their kids out? So I think in a way, this is also going to eliminate and hurt a lot of industries that have been the, you know, monkey see, monkey do. Well, I want my kids to go to the best schools. Why? Because that's what John Doe sent his daughters to, and I need to do the same. And he's going to go get his fine arts degree from UCLA, and I'm so proud of that paper that says UCLA, yet I'm going to spend $200,000. You're seeing a lot of industries today shivering who haven't adapted to the current times. And one of the ones is going to be the educational system. Obviously, we've been talking about this a lot when you're talking about, you know, the best teachers nowadays are on YouTube, or they're creating content and they're making people question. And this tool, the iPhone tool, is a powerful tool because the millennials can really listen to the right content to get them to challenge the conventional thinking. But there's got to be a lot of deans around the world that are shivering, saying, look, I mean, our model may be questioned right now. Our model may be challenged right now. Our model may not be the best way in the future because, you know, I'm having to, you know, spend time with my kid, and we don't homeschool, but I got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. Here I am homeschooling right now. Here I am finding a way to run 2 companies and do what I'm doing. On top of that, I'm also homeschooling my kids because I'm forced to do so. It's making me think, is the current model the real model? And maybe our capabilities are going to be different. And so I think colleges are going to take a very big hit with the educational system, with this taking place. And then the other thought is also the fact that you said something. You said, you know, the author of the book, by the way, people who are asking what the title of the book is, I put a link below. It's called, if you can go back to, so we can put it, the Grunch of Giants. We'll put the link below for some of you guys. I want to get the book that Robert was talking about to make sure you guys can get it. And we'll also put the link of the wartime video for some of you guys that want to watch it. Robert, what are your thoughts about this? What are your thoughts about this? You know the quote, I'm quoting somebody, I just don't know who it is. The person said, hard times produce strong leaders. Strong leaders produce good times. Good times produce weak leaders. Weak leaders produce tough times. So again, tough times produce strong leaders, good times, weak leaders, tough times. If this is tough times, does it mean the last generation were producing weak leaders? What are your thoughts about that?
It's corrupt leaders. There's a difference between weak and corrupt. And the corruption starts in our education system. Like I said, when I was standing there at Norton Air Force Base in January 1983, I'm being spit on and eggs thrown at me. We had to change our clothes. And I had just come back from wartime. So as you know, we've talked about the wartime leader is very different. I don't think anybody ever knows the grief it is when an air crew doesn't return. And we're carrier pilots. And you stand there for hours hoping your friends come back. And they're MIAs today. They're still MIA. We don't know what happened to them. They just disappear, you know. And there's a sadness and a grief that's so profound. And so when I come back, and I land at Norton Air Force Base again, and they're spitting on me, I'm going. And then later on, I meet guys, you know, the boomers. So what you doing during Vietnam? Says, oh, I was in Canada, or I was in college, and all this. I hate to say it, but sort of my respect for them goes down a little bit. And you understand what I'm saying because you've been there. You know what war is like. You know what dying is like. So you can't explain it to them, and then you can't even explain it to somebody who never joined the military, you know, somebody who dodged it. So we're all different human beings, and we have different levels of tolerance and fear and all this stuff. I'll just say this much, you know, is my, just being on you guys, I started tweeting for the first time. And I had one that was 12,700 likes. You know, most people don't get 1,000. I got 12,700. But I also got warnings, stay in your lane. Because I was crossing into pharmaceuticals. Because I think that, you know, Gates just announced he's got a vaccine. Really? But if you understand where the money is that when somebody produces a vaccine, and Trump had to buy in on it. He's a friend of mine, Trump, he had to buy in. Because they're going to push this vaccine through the system. And that means everybody must be vaccinated. That's pharmaceuticals. So I was told to stay in my lane. it's a good warning. Do you know what I mean? I take the warning, I mean, and all this stuff, because that's not the battle I want to fight. So if I could say something else, I give people a better idea. And it's more than Grunge of Giants, full of many books, but he talked about that day, he called it the 5 M's. And so the mind is that Grunge controls academics. There's no financial education. So they control the mind. Then they control the money. That's Daniel D. Martino Booth, the Fed. The Fed is not federal. It's a cartel, like a drug cartel. Then you have military industrial complex. You know, I woke up in Vietnam and said, why am I killing innocent people? Why are my friends dying? What am I doing here? Who am I fighting for? And then you have the media. So right now we're stepping on media's tails. You know, my friend is Steve Burke of NBC Universal. I said, you guys are crushing us. And I said, well, we're just little guys on this little iPhone, you know. So media is scared, and then medicine. So what I have been doing just by tweeting about Bill Gates and vaccines, it involves the minds, and if you don't, Fuller says, you know, most people, oh, I love my children. That's why I'm afraid. So it's love. You know, I don't want my kids to get it, so we're going to vaccine everybody. And if you don't vaccine, I'll kill you because you're going to damage my kids. So it's love and hate are very close to each other. And so the media controls us by love and hate and fear. And then you have the military, and as you know, the National Guard's in place already protecting our toilet paper. But they're there for other reasons too, civil unrest, which is coming. And then our money supply. So what happened for me is when I read Grunge of Giants, I made the decision I would never need money again. And that's when I chose to listen to my rich dad. My rich dad was an entrepreneur. And my poor dad was an academic, a poor academic, who was teaching kids to be fragile. Job security, steady paycheck, and pension. So that's why I wrote this book this year, is Who Stole My Pension? We haven't seen anything yet, Patrick. You know, when the baby boomers wake up, not only has a COVID virus nailed them because they're old and feeble, but Wall Street has sucked all the cash out of their pension plans. So we haven't seen the worst of it yet. So that's why I'm saying to you and your people that follow you, I would follow, you know, if those of you following Patrick, he is a wartime leader. You need a wartime leader right now, because what a wartime leader fights for is peace. You know, all I wanted was peace. I was out there fighting for peace, but you have to be very courageous to do that. So I commend you, Patrick, for doing that. And all of you following, please listen to him, because we're in very dangerous times right now, because we are messing with the mind, which is the university system. They make so much money. Student loans, you know, student loans today are $1.7 trillion. The subprime mortgage was only $1 trillion. So we screw the kids. How dare we do that? And then you got money. You learn nothing about money at school. And if you really have a real financial transformation, you don't need money. You can just make money like this. And then if you've served in the military, you'll understand what real courage is. And that was the word I got. And I went to military school in New York only because I was such a screwed up kid in Hawaii surfing all the time. And so I needed some discipline. And when I meet people who are not successful, they lack discipline. It's not that they're not smart. You know, they can't, it's not save money. They can't budget money. You know, right now I saw my friend's sister, and she said, what's your sister doing? She says, well, she's at home having sex with her boyfriend. I said, well, we're going to have a population explosion from this thing. You know, then they can't afford to take care of their kids because they don't have any money, and they're employees, and they're going to pay high taxes. And the media right now is shaking their boots because what we're doing threatens them. They cannot control us. And then we have medicine. So when I was 35 years old, sitting in Fuller's audience, and he's written many books. Grunge was not his best book. I wouldn't bother reading it personally, but I understood it. So that's where we are today, Patrick. And what we're doing is the news. And our job is to be wartime leaders and be brave, be courageous, get our skills up, get our entrepreneurial skills up, learn to sell, learn to communicate. Don't learn, my problem, Patrick, is I infuriate people because I attack them. Being a Marine is not bright because I like to fight. And that's why I had to go to military school to discipline myself. So that's, if any of you out there, have young people, I have a lot of friends whose sons are wimps. They're just wimps. They're sitting at home sucking their thumb. And then now that they lost their job, they want to go back and get a job. Or exactly as you said, they'll make more sitting at home sucking their thumb. And we've lost another generation there. So it really is time to be a wartime leader. And a wartime leader, you've seen them, some of the greatest generals, the best gentlemen I've ever met. My roommate on the Carrier, he and I were both lieutenants, and we both flew together in Vietnam. Well, I got kicked out because of disciplinary problems. So I left the Marine Corps as a lieutenant. They didn't like me flying women and drinking beer while on duty.
That's probably a good thing.
I understand discipline now, But my roommate, Jack, went on to become a lieutenant general. So I said, we both came out lieutenants. One was a lieutenant general, and I came out lieutenant. But now he's a congressman in Congress. He's still fighting. He's still a peacetime leader. So the generals I know are some of the greatest human beings I've ever met. They rise to the surface. And, lieutenants like me get kicked out. And I'm proud of it. I'm glad I did it. But I wouldn't do it again because it was a very good growing experience, if you know what I mean. And I just had fun. They give a 27-year-old kid a helicopter and a credit card. And I was flying out of Hawaii, and there was a lot of remote beaches that I used to go and visit with beautiful young women, I wouldn't recommend doing it, but I'm glad I did it. It's character.
It's character. I like that. It's character.
No, Patrick, let me tell you what happened. So I get court-martialed. They should have court-martialed me. So I walked in, and I remember that the captain was Captain Abrams, who was the prosecutor. And I was lying through my teeth. So finally one day I had this transformational event. I did a thing called EST, Earhart Seminars Training. Everybody did it, and all this. And I sat in this room and I realized I was a liar. And I realized that's why I'd never be successful, because I could lie, cheat, and steal, and I was very good at it. And so I called up Captain Abrams, and I was living in Hawaii in Waikiki. I was making a lot of money in real estate. And I called Captain Abrams and I said, Captain, I'm coming in. He said, what do you mean you're coming in? I said, I'm going to come in. I will tell you what I know. He couldn't believe it. I just realized if I didn't confess my sins, as a Catholic would say, I'd go to hell. Hell is not in hell. Hell is I live with my lying, cheating, stealing every day of my life. So I took the stand and he deposed me. I told him the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I told him every criminal event. They weren't really criminal, they were petty thieves. I did stupid things like fly this, did this, I machine gun goats from my helicopter. And I said, I did all this. At the end of it, 3.5 hours, I think I lost 20 pounds. And he said, I said to him, he says, Captain, he goes, I'm going to go to jail. He says, no, just thank you for telling the truth. He gave me an honorable discharge. And it was one of the most profound, transformational, metamorphosis. You go from an immature form to an adult form. I grew up. I said, holy mackerel, the truth will set you free. I understand that at a level that the average person will never know, because I had been such a scumbag, dishonest, disciplinary problem. And then, like with my wife, I've never cheated on her. Most of my friends cheat on their wives, 70% do. But when I said I'd get married this time, I would not cheat on her. Marriage is still hard, but cheating makes it worse, if you know what I mean. So it's a matter of not trying to change the world out there. You know, the crisis is between this year and this year, and in your heart. And that's why being a military leader, a wartime leader, is important, because it's about courage at this time. It's about being truthful, being forthright, being upright, being a stand-up guy. That's the difference today. And it's not about what the crooks are doing, it's what you're doing.
If your mind was a computer and I was to be able to go into search the files, I wonder what kind of documents I would find in that computer of yours. You just went from coronavirus to educational system, to Bill Gates, to vaccine, to Bill Gates, to helicopters, to women, to booze, to lieutenant general, to lieutenant, to getting out, to cheating on wives, to 70%, to friends. Your mind is like constantly going with a bunch of different thoughts. You know, it makes me think. I got a question for you. You know, the one thing that a lot of people are calling me right now, you got a lot of videos that are going viral right now on YouTube on a lot of different topics. And, you know, we're getting hit up left and right. I had a biowarfare guy in here and a pandemic expert here. One of them is a former colonel and the other one is a lieutenant colonel. And we had General Spalding here from Air Force. And we're talking about China, a lot of topics about China. And you're seeing all this data right now. If you're turning on the news, you're not going to be able to watch the news for more than 20 seconds without hearing the word coronavirus or China. It just keeps coming up left and right, left and right. This is an interesting question for you because I have an answer for this. I'm curious to know what you say to this. Is, Robert, how does a viewer who has all this content being hit up all over the place, you know, how does a viewer decipher between the level of credibility being given to any of these conspiracy theories that are being spread and to know what is factual, what is just people who have a lot of time on their hands, who sit there and panic and they're worried and they share all this fear and people are sitting there looking at the stuff with a full level of credibility? How do you decipher between reality, the truth, facts, and conspiracy?
Well, there's another guy who's talking about coronavirus. That's Martinson, Chris Martinson. And he and Adam Taggart, his partner in the business, they talk the most important thing you got to have is your team, your core support group.
Team.
Yeah, well, and people talk about team all the time, but this is what Fuller taught me. It's a synergy of different professions. So I have a bookkeeper. You know, people have QuickBooks. I have a bookkeeper, a human being. I have Tom Wheelwright, my accountant. He's my tax guy. I have Garrett Sutton, my general counsel. You know, I have Kenny McElroy, who runs my debt department. He's my partner in real estate. And we have Josh and Lisa Lannon, who are into addictions, because we're all addicted to something. You know, mine is food, Chinese food. But anyway, you know, I'm gaining weight sitting at home because of my addiction. So the most important thing is to have the integrity of a team that will call you when you're all out of line, or at least question you. Because we all have a light side and a dark side. And my dark side is very dark. I quite enjoy it. And, you know, you could call it negative, but the reason I'm prepared today is I don't trust my government. I don't trust the Fed. You know, when I read Grunch of Giants and then I wrote this book here, Fake, you know, this is 2019, fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. It's fake money, the fiat currency. That's why I recommend Bitcoin and gold and silver, just because they're outside the system. You know, Bitcoin is open source. So you know the Fed's going to come after them. I know they're going to come after them. So they're going to create their own Bitcoin. Because that's why Satoshi Nakamoto, I guess, says, I don't know if he's real either, but he disappeared from sight. You know, because he came out in 2009, right after the subprime crash in 2008. I think he either was disappeared or he was smart enough to disappear. Because you're messing with some very, very big players. You know, like I'm messing with the academic system and the finance system. And when I crossed into coronavirus and the pandemic, I was warned, you know, I was pounded on social media. They said, you stay out of this one, because pharmaceuticals and insurance is big business. So the thing is the most important thing is just like that book, Atlas Shrugged. You know, the capitalists go into hiding. And so I have several places where I hide, but I also hide, like we're hiding right now in plain sight in social media. So I get together on Zoom with my team and all this. And we might broadcast my little meeting to show you what a real team looks like, what a real business team. You know, rugby team is one team, football is one team, soccer is one team. But if you ever see a real business team, it's interesting. So we're a small entrepreneur group, but we produce incredible results. I mean, I make millions tax-free because I play by the same rules the corporations do. If you're a pizza shop owner, you're playing by the small rules. So you've got to have these good advisors and all this. I always have general counsel, and I don't want to break the rules. But when social media, they pounded on me, stay out of the virus. You know, don't talk about Bill Gates having human testing yesterday. Jesus, that was fast. But I understand vaccines. You know, vaccine to be profitable must be driven by the government. It must be 100% compliance. So they get, you know, let's say, I don't know what vaccines the kids have today, but a lot of parents won't vaccine their kids. And what social media does is get the other parents to attack that parent and say, you're damaging my kids. Say, well, I love my kids. You don't love your kids. So I don't vaccine because I love my kids. I vaccine because I love my kids. And really what it is fear. And that's why you got to be a wartime leader, because I never hated the Viet Cong. I respected them. You know, they were just like you and me. I hated when I saw their families die. I hated when we killed them. It didn't make me happy. You know, it was love. But we also fight out of fear. Now, who is making us fight? I don't know today. You know, look at it this way, Patrick. 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis, but Stalin also killed 25 million other people in their gulags. I don't know how many people China's killing. I think that's where we're getting to. You know, all of this political correctness, you can't say this, you can't say that, gender pronouns, exactly I think Jordan Peterson talks about. That's First Amendment. They're taking away our First Amendment, and that's what Stalin had to do and Mao had to do. You're so afraid of talking to anybody. And then social you know, this thing about you can't congregate, that's First Amendment too, the right to assemble. So they're stepping on the Constitution. And so being a sick individual, I said, well, I'm really glad I have the Second Amendment rights, because my social distancing, I can hit at 250 yards. I'm very good with a gun. But I was trained to do that. You know, we're trained to kill people. So my social distancing is I have a very powerful arsenal. And I have tons of gold, not tons, but gold and silver and Bitcoin. I want to stay outside the system, and I don't need a job. I love my country, I love what I do, but I hate fear and intimidation. And when I started writing about Gates and mandatory vaccination, I got told to stay in my lane. And you know what I'm talking about. So that's why today we have to be wartime leaders and be brave and courageous and get smarter. You know, and that's why I keep saying the best teachers are on YouTube. That's the difference. Or you can watch porno. They're both fun.
One makes you money.
One
makes you, you know, lack of focus with the other one. So Robert, the question wasn't answered. I'm going to bring you back to the question. How do you decipher between which conspiracies and theories to believe and which ones not to? How do you decipher between factual, truth, or fake?
Well, I kind of answered the question. I have my team.
Okay, so you probably stuff through
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah. When somebody talks about, you know, like is it PPP or something, that free money they're handing out? Well, I just called Tom Wheelwright. He wrote the book Tax-Free Wealth. And that guy's an A student. He read the 8,000 pages in a night or something. And I can't read that well, you know. So I just called Tom, said, what's real and what's fake? So this is the money that can get this and all this. So we applied for the money. And my general counsel, Garrett Sutton, he says, how can you take government money? I said, why not? So we don't always agree, but we question each other. And so I don't know what's going on out there, but I do know what's going on in my team. And the problem is, and Bucky Fuller called it, he says it's called synergy. In school, there's no synergy because they teach us to be specialists, like a doctor, lawyer, accountant, and all this. And they operate alone. What a leader does, Patrick, as you know, a wartime leader unites. And a wartime leader brings his council together. And so when I'm talking about taxes, you know, my accountant, Tom Wheelwright's on it, but my general counsel, Garrett Sutton's there to make sure I'm not breaking the law. And so we play it very, very tight, like a big corporation. See, there's small entrepreneurs and smart entrepreneurs. And a smart entrepreneur has a very smart team of accountants, attorneys, and all this. The average small businessman has a book. They don't even have a bookkeeper because their wife or husband's a bookkeeper. They have a CPA, they have some lawyer, and they have a financial planner. That's small. That's why they stay small. But to be a smart entrepreneur is why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, why I do what I do. It's because I have a very smart team. I'm not smart. I was never smart. You know, Marines aren't bright. But we have a lot of guts, a lot of courage. And that's what they make us strong. But most academics are very smart, but they lack guts. So they become peacetime leaders. You know, they want tenure, they want job security, and they'll screw anybody for a buck. But my guys, we're tight. You know what I'm talking about, Patrick? There's people you will trust with your life.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And my wife and I love each other a lot. You know, we trust each other. We come through hell together. We've had presidents and CEOs of our own company steal from us, rob us. But it made us stronger. We became anti-fragile. We come out smarter and stronger. So if I could encourage anybody, you're not an island, but you're also who your friends and advisors are. If you have stupid friends and advisors, you're stupid. You have poor friends and advisors, you're poor like them. I hate to say it, you and I know I'm talking about.
It's a great quote. If you have stupid friends and advisors, you're stupid. You know, it's just a very simple quote, you know, but there's a lot of weight behind it.
Patrick, let me you know this better than I do. When you crossed the line into the battlefield, that was the band of brothers. That was the test, wasn't it?
The level of camaraderie in a military, it can't be explained. You know, the level of camaraderie, it's tough to explain that part.
Yeah. And worse than that is that, are we ready for it? And most peacetime leaders aren't ready for anything. They want a paycheck. They want a pay raise. They want a handout. They want Social Security. They want a pension. You know, when I still remember I was solo, and most, gunships don't fly solo because our job is we always fought as teams. And one day I came across a 20 millimeter coming up at us. 50 cal is bad. 50 cals are big, but 20 millimeters like ketchup bottles coming up at us. And I was, holy mackerel. So then John Wayne comes out and I go, okay, let's take them on. I said, well, the trouble is, all we got are 30 cals. You know what I mean? We got M60s. And my crew chief, who had been to Vietnam, I don't know, ever since Jesus or something, used to the South, Staff Sergeant Jackson. He taps me on my helmet and he goes, hey, Lieutenant. I go, yeah. He says, I got bad news for you. I said, what's that? I said, you take him on, right? And this shit's coming up at us. You take him on. Only one of us is going home today. Either he is going home or we're going home, but we're not both going home. So why don't you think about it for a while? So I stopped being John Wayne. I said, yeah, it's a good idea, 'cause he gave me permission to be a pussy, for a little brief moment in time. So I turned the helicopter around and didn't engage. But as you know, it's in your DNA to engage, because if you don't, your friends will laugh at you. So I sat there and I'm going, you better think. So all of you sitting at home today, unemployed or whatever you're doing, think, study. I said, okay, I'm outgunned. He's going to pound the crap out of me. We got a crew of 5. We're going to die today. So I said, I better think. So I said, oh, ask for help. So I called up and I said, it says, fire mission, any fast movers in the area? And a fast mover is a fighter jet, so you hear this, Roger, Navy flight of 3, A4s, returning to base. I said, Roger, what ordnance have you got? He says, we have napalm. I said, thank you very much. Fire. So instead of being John Wayne, I got to be a wartime leader. And I said, these are the coordinates. I'll fly in. As soon as he starts firing at me, you guys roll. And so Jackson, this white guy, the great guy, little Brett, what I call that little mustache, and a very cool guy. He goes, smart move, Lieutenant. I said, yeah, let's go get him. That's a wartime leader. So I fly in a little closer. I hate to say that, but that guy was coming at me. He was firing these huge ketchup bottles, and so they, the Navy Air Forces, target in sight. Thank you. And you saw that whole hillside just go up in napalm. And we're flying back, and Jackson says, well, I'm glad we're going home tonight. So that's a war story. And when I say that to most peacetime people, they wonder if I'm watching a movie or something. Oh, did you see that on Netflix? I said, I saw it in real life. And I don't feel good about it. I didn't want to kill that guy. But he's going to, that's what happens. So anyway, those are lessons. Are you wartime or peacetime? And I think right now what you're leading, Patrick, a bunch of wartime leaders. People with courage, bravery, but you also have to be smart. You can't be just John Wayne out there. So I'm backing off on this COVID and Gates and antivirus and all that stuff. I don't know what the heck to talk about, but not my fight.
Your lieutenant general, or the gentleman you were in the military with, would probably tell you being smart right now.
He's a very smart guy.
Yeah, it's
Congressman Jack Berkman from Michigan.
Do you still keep in contact or no?
Yeah, we're buddies.
That's cool.
We're a band of brothers. People don't understand that. When you've been in a war together, there's like Siamese twins at the heart. You know what I'm talking about? And the average person doesn't have that. And that's what when you publish that thing about wartime leader and peacetime leader, I said your timing for me was impeccable. Because sometimes you got to back off. Do you know what I mean? I didn't need to take on that gun position. But somebody else can. So you and I are small guys in the scheme of the big corporate world, and we work with the people we can work with and make them better leaders. That's our job.
Well, one thing I'm certain of, I am 100% certain of this, is the fact that we are going to be introduced to the future leaders of 3, 5, 10 years from now during these times. I don't know why it is that it almost is necessary to go through times like this to find out what you're made of. Yesterday I was talking about this, where you have to know who you are and what you're made up of. You have to put yourself in tough situations sometimes, and most people don't want to do it intentionally. Almost all the time, this, we have to be forced to be put into a situation that pushes us, challenges us, but we don't like it. We're uncomfortable, we're frustrated, we're agitated, we're afraid, we're scared, we're worried, we're overthinking, we're self-sabotaging ourselves. Many times we have to go through that to realize what we're thinking about. But right now, if the game of chess was being played right now in the world, those who know their next 5, 10, 15 moves are going to be winning right now. Those who know their next 5, 10, 15 moves are going to be winning right now. I remember a person called me. They said, Pat, what do I do next? I said, what do you mean? He says, what do I do next? I'm so worried. I said, so you're worried about what? I'm worried about this coronavirus. This was middle of February, late February. I said, how much time have you dedicated to researching the topic yourself? He says, well, I haven't done it myself. So why don't you take some time and do some self-research and see what you come up with, and then, see what that turns out to be for you. And when I did the research with pandemics, Robert, this is what I came up with based on the last 10 pandemics we've had, how the market responded 6 months later, 12 months later. Out of the 10 pandemics we've had, 9 out of 10, 6 months later, the economy recovered. nationwide in US, and 9 out of 10 also recovered worldwide in 12 months. The only one that didn't, that caused a downturn even 6-12 months later, was AIDS. AIDS is the only one. I mean, when AIDS happened, I bet if AIDS were to happen today, think about how bad Tinder would be. Think about how bad dating would be. People were afraid of having sex when AIDS first came out, the kind of fear it put into people. And a lot of people right now are experiencing this fear in a way they've never experienced before. I have people that are coming for job interviews because we're still hiring and people are still looking for jobs. And they're uncomfortable to disrespect you, where they're kind of like, do you shake hands? So what do we, it's like the whole shaking hand thing. And, you know, hey, how you doing? This is going to be in our minds a lot for a lot of people. But at the same time, this is also where I'm at, Robert, and you may or may not agree with this, and I'd be curious to know what you're saying, and we can wrap up on this thought, is I also believe that, you know, when you first lose somebody, a friend, you don't think you'll ever recover from it, but you do. You know, when you lose somebody, you go to the funeral, a couple thousand people show up. And if it's somebody that's very close to you, you go back every year. And you go back every year. And if it's somebody that's very, very close to you, a spouse, a father, a mother, a child, a sibling, a best friend, maybe you go more often. But gradually, we go back to living a regular life. No child thinks they can live without their father until the day comes when they lose their father or their mother. Nobody thinks they can, you know, they can go out there, oh my gosh, I'm 18 years old, my dad kicked me out of the house, I got to figure out a way to live. I don't know how I'm going to be doing this. You know, oh my gosh, we're about to go be tested to go into the gas chamber. I've never been in a gas chamber before. Why am I going into the gas? I don't want to smell CS gas. I don't think I can handle this. But then almost every time when these things happen, you'll have the person that everybody notices their spirit. You talked about a story. I was in boot camp, and in boot camp, I was going there with 3 other guys in my bus while we're driving to the airport. We're all from LA. One of them was an MS-13 guy. One of them was a 18th Street or a blood guy. And another guy was a Latino short guy who played soccer. And on the way to Atlanta, we were on the same flight. Then we landed in Atlanta. Then we got on the bus, Greyhound, to go to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And in the bus, everybody's talking hard. You know, hey, let me tell you, you know, I came from the streets of LA. Nothing's going to scare the hell out of me. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be so good. No one can scare me. I'm going to tell these drill sergeants what to do. And then we get to the base. Then the driver says with a smile, we're 10 minutes away. We're like, yeah, we got this. No big deal. 5 minutes away, gentlemen. Oh, no problem. Let them see what they can do. And then we arrive and the drill sergeants come out screaming at us. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is, do push-ups. And then you can't salute anymore. Remember the days you had to salute by pushing your left hand up with this one. Long story short, when boot camp happened, the toughest guys couldn't handle it. But then you saw the guy that was quiet, timid. Nobody could really see on the outside how tough he was because he didn't have any tattoos, just a simple looking guy. And when it came down to it, he was tougher than anybody else. And that guy today is a senator of Ohio. I'm friends with him. And this is 20 years ago, 22 years ago to what happens today. We're going to see how tough people are today on how they react. And in the next 3, 6, 12, 24, it ain't going to take a long time to see, 3, 6, 12 months, we're going to be hearing about a lot of new names, new voices, and communities that are rising up to be new leaders because we're going to see so many different stories. So as bad as it is, as scary as it is for a lot of people, I also think this is a great time for people to become heroes of their family and this next generation that's coming up, as long as they're consuming the right type of content and getting the right mindset in, which is kind of what you were alluding to earlier. So what are your thoughts about knowing that sometimes we almost need these tough times to filter out the weak from the strong, and new leaders being born during times like this?
Well, I think you said it. That's a very good question, because the one thing that Nauseam Talib talked about with anti-fragile, an anti-fragile person will seek uncertainty. They'll always test themselves. You know, what happened? What can't I do? What do I need to learn? You know, they want to test their abilities. Whereas a fragile person will always seek protection. They will not come out, they'll never metamorphosize. You know, they'll be this caterpillar, but never metamorphosize into a butterfly. In fact, many caterpillars turn into earthworms. They go deeper and they hide. You know, one of the guys I studied was Castro and Che Guevara. And those were interesting dudes. I mean, they were killers. But, so this may sound silly, but I followed Guevara's path, you know, around. He carried the same weapon I did in Vietnam. I thought that was, you know, a full automatic 30 cal M1 carbine. That's what I carried. They gave me a 38 special. I just lost you.
I'm here.
Okay. But anyway, what Guevara found out, because he went from Cuba to, you know, Bolivia, and he tried to get the peasants to rise up. And I knew a guy who was there when they killed him. And he said, you know, Guevara had maggots in him. He was so shot up and so wounded, but he never stopped fighting. And he was fighting for the peasants to rise up, like they did in Cuba. And so I said, what do you think Guevara learned? He says, well, you can't motivate peasants. And he says, what worked in Cuba was there was a middle class with money. So when you think about it, what's happening today with this coronavirus is the peasants will stay peasants. The word peasant comes from the word paysan, French. Pay is land, sant is person of the land. And they're just going to stay peasants. Instead of getting bigger, they'll just shrink. I mean, I have family members like that, highly educated people. But instead of pushing out of the cocoon, they're going to pull back. But the reason it worked in Cuba was there was a middle class. And the middle class had something to lose. Interesting, huh?
Very.
Very interesting. So
Very.
my friend who was with the team that killed Guevara, he said that was a tough son of a bitch. The trouble was he was trying to motivate peasants. And I've always carried that as a lesson. Not that they're right or wrong, good or bad, but some people just don't have the heart of a warrior. And it's not right or wrong, it's just they don't have it. They're good people, you know, hard-working people, but they don't want to fight.
Well, that's. I think that's a good way to end this. I think it's definitely a good way to end this, Robert. This has been fun, man. It's your first live ever. I'm sure if those of you who love Robert, if you want him to do another one, let him know if you want him to do another one. And from everybody to you, Robert, a day after your birthday to do this, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Myself to you, man. I am so glad that you do what you do with your content to get a lot of people. You've inspired a lot of people. Your book was the third book I ever read. I told you this. Rich Dad Poor Dad was the third book. First one was How to Win Friends and Influence People. Second one was How to Master the Art of Selling. And the third one was Rich Dad Poor Dad in '99 when I read it when I first got out of the military. So you made impact in many people's lives, and I appreciate you myself. So having said that, Robert, thank you so much, brother. This has been a blast to have me on your show, and you giving us some insight.
It's my honor to be on your program, and thank you all. And you're following a great leader, a wartime leader. Thank you.
Take care, Robert.